Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second lecture for this series of the Sundman Lecture Series. And I'd like to welcome Michael T. Shutterly with his talk on the effects of a century of change on our change. So, as Michael Shutterly says in his bio, he's a recovering lawyer who formerly worked in the financial services world, specializing in anti-money laundering and consumer protection. Yeah, we don't like to see coins get washed in the laundry. It's terrible. But he is now a coin collector, exhibitor, writer, and presenter, specializing in Byzantine, early medieval, and Roman Republican coinage, and also Hungarian hyperinflation currency. An ANA Life member, he is also a member of more than a dozen coin clubs, national, regional, and local, several of which allow him to serve as an officer or director. He received a BA in physiological psychology from the University of Pennsylvania and a JD from Boston University, and he's an accomplished speaker, as I can say from experience. He's been a speaker before for us, and welcome, Michael.
Okay, so I will be talking about the effects of a century of change on our change. And when I say change, I'm basically talking about circulating coinage, the change in our pockets, that sort of thing. I'm going to be looking at several different issues. One is, what has happened to our change in the last 100 years since 1924? What actually caused the change in our change? I really like to say the change in our change. It just rolls so nicely. How has the change in our change changed how and what we collect? And also, what will the change in our change mean for the future? To an extent, you'll see that that change coins are kind of what I look at as being the sort of the canary in the numismatic coal mine, and it does have implications for what happens down the road. So what has actually changed in our change? Well, there's several different things. One is in some ways there's a lot more of it than there was 100 years ago. In some ways there's a lot less of it than there was 100 years ago. It looks a lot different from what it looked like 100 years ago, and we don't use it quite the same way that we used to use it. So let's go to 1924. What was actually in our change? We had four circulating gold coin denominations at that time. You had the $20 gold piece, the double eagle, the $10, the $5, and the $2.50. They weren't all minted every single year, and they certainly weren't at every single mint, but they were in circulation at that time. We also had four circulating silver coin denominations, the dollar, half dollar, quarter dollar, and the dime. Again, they weren't all minted every single year at every single mint, but they were the circulating coinage at that time. Finally, we had two base metal circulating coin denominations, the 5-cent coin, usually known as the nickel, and the cent, usually known as the penny, and I'll probably say penny even though purists object to it because we don't have pennies. The British have pennies, we have cents. I like to say pennies because everybody does. In the 1920s, that was basically what you would have seen, but during the first 5 years of the 1920s, you had a few other things that you could get. There were 7 different commemorative coin programs, precious metal programs, where you could have gotten a total of about 13 different coins, 2 gold and 11 silvers. But they didn't have any proof sets and they didn't have any mint sets the way we have now today. So that was basically it. You had the circulating coins and a handful of commemorative coins. So let's look what's in our change today, 2024. We have 4 circulating coin denominations, the quarter, the dime, the nickel, and the penny. Abe Lincoln is still on the penny, on the obverse. On the reverse, it's a bus token, but that's neither here nor there. But we are down from 10 down to 4, and it is a very significant difference in what it looks like. Besides the circulating coins, if you go to the mint and try and get other kinds of coins or through the mint, we have proof coins every single year with multiple variations of it. You can get reverse proofs, you can get enhanced proofs, you can get silver proofs, base coin proofs, all sorts of different things. We have a lot of mint sets each year. We have a whole lot of commemorative coin programs every year using precious metals, except for 2023. Every single year in the 20s, we've had multiples. They've got 2 going currently right now this year. The dollar does not circulate, it's not minted for circulation, but we have 2 different programs going on right now for non-circulating dollars and base metals. There's the Native American coin based on what used to be the Sacagawea coin, and then there's also the American Innovation Series. 5 different coin designs a year for the dollar that are based upon American innovation. Each state gets into that program over the course of about 10 years, and then the territories in DC follow after that. And we also have multiple precious metal bullion coin programs. Even though we don't have any circulating coins using precious metals, we've got gold bullion coins you can get, or you can get silver bullion coins, or you can get palladium coins, or you can get platinum coins. And gets a little pricey after a while. If you were to collect everything that the mint puts out each year, one example of each thing, you'd have to spend somewhere between about $13,000 and $15,000 every single year. Pretty pricey for the average collector. Very easy if you just want to collect the circulating coins by date and mint, because again, there's only 4 denominations, a few different designs on the quarters, but there's obviously very inexpensive things to do. So let's look at coin production over between 100 years ago and today. I'm using a 5-year running total for the 1920s because they didn't do every coin, every mint, every year. And this is just to give you a sort of a ballpark look at it. You see during those first 5 years, they didn't do any of the quarter eagles or the half eagles, the $5 and the $2.50 gold coins, but they did do all the rest. They had basically about 1 3/8 billion coins in that 5-year span. And what's interesting, or I think it's interesting, is cents accounted for almost half of all the coins that they minted. Of the 10 denominations, half of the coins minted were cents. On the other hand, if you look at the face value, the silver dollar and the gold double eagle, they counted for about 10% of the total coins minted, but they counted about 90% of the total face value of the coins that were minted. And because of that, the average face value of the coins that were being minted during the early 1920s was about 48 cents. So that's higher than the largest denomination coin that is minted now for circulation. Let's go to what's going on now. I don't want to use 2024 because obviously the year's not over yet, so this is only a 4-year running total. But you can see that in 4 years, the mint has produced more than 28 times as many coins as it did in 5 years in the early 1920s. It's just those 4 denominations. The total face value there is, obviously a huge amount, but the average face value of the coins is down to 7 cents, from 48 down to 7 cents. Again, based upon the fact that we don't have any high denomination circulating coins and everything's focused on the low denomination ones. And you see that now the cent accounts for more than half of all the coins that are minted every year are cents. Well, let's take a look at what it costs to make coins nowadays. The cost of production for a cent is 3 cents. It costs over 3 cents to mint each cent. It costs 11.5 cents to mint each nickel. So basically they both cost more than twice, in the case of the cent more than 3 times as the face value of what the coin is. On the other hand, dimes and quarters, they're basically less than half, the production cost is less than half the face value, so that the mint actually makes a huge profit on that, making up for what happens on the cents and the nickels. So does it make sense to make cents? Well, we're losing over $93 million a year on the cents and over $93 million a year on the 5 cent. Again, the other 2 denominations making a big, huge profit. But you can see there is something kind of weird going on there, that we keep minting these coins that make no sense to mint. So what's really changed in the last 100 years? First of all, precious metal coinage is just gone. It doesn't exist anymore for circulation purposes. The 6 highest face value denominations are all gone. We're down to the bottom 4. There's been a huge increase in total coin production. There's been a huge decrease in the average face value of the coins put into circulation. And the production of the 1 cent coins even more overwhelms the production of everything else than it did there, even though the mint loses money every single time it produces a cent. So what does it all really mean? Well, you could think that this means that circulating coins must be tremendously important in the economy. Why are we making all these coins? They must be really important to us, so we must be using them all the time. And given that we're losing money on every cent produced, and we keep producing more and more all the time, that must be the most key thing to the US economy. But that's not really, we all know that's not really the case. So what we're doing is we're drowning in these low denomination coins that we hardly ever use. A lot of the places where you could have used them in the past, 100 years ago, you can't use anymore. And the types of goods and services for which we used to use coins, you can't use them for that anymore. So what is really going on? What caused these kinds of changes? Well, the world has changed, obviously, in the last 100 years, and I think there are 3 basic factors driving at least what's happening in the US. Economic change has changed things. That's pretty much universal, because that happens all over the world. There's been a lot of technological change that's changed things all over the world. And we as Americans tend to resist change, and that resistance to change has itself caused some things to change. And I'll be talking about that as well. So what's the big thing in economics? It's inflation. A cent in 1924 had the same purchasing power as about 18.5 cents has today. So that's a huge drop when you think about it. And of course, that's the same for all the other coins that we're circulating. They all have much more purchasing power than they do today. In 2024, when coins circulate, they typically circulate when they're given in change for purchases using banknotes. If you go to, for example, Dunkin' Donuts, with which I have some acquaintance, you buy chocolate frosted cake donuts, which I've heard about. You give a $5 bill, they charge you $2.22. You get $2.78 change. $2 bills, 3 quarters, and 3 pennies. You go back the next day, you take 2 of those $2 bills, and then you give them a quarter and 2 of the pennies, and they give you a nickel change for that. That's usually where you're going to see change being used today. It's kind of, you just kind of recycle what you've already gotten before, usually doing the best you can to get rid of those darn pennies, which are really a pain to deal with for a lot of people. It's gotten to the point where there are several states that have actually enacted legislation requiring retailers to accept change in change, because a lot of places just won't do it anymore. It goes to an extent with cash as well. If you go to Wrigley Field, you will not get a hot dog for cash. You're going to have to pay with a credit card or a debit card. There are a lot of places that refuse to accept any kind of like paper money or coins, and it's getting more and more common all the time. This is a worldwide problem, the issue of inflation, because it happens to everybody. Inflation has existed at least since coins were invented sometime in the 7th century BC. The value of coins over time, it always goes down. You get the occasional little change when there's some kind of a major depression. It might actually increase the purchase power, but then it just drops right back down again when the economy gets back in shape. Outside the US, what usually happens when you've got the moderate long-term inflation that we usually deal with, the 2, 3, 4, 5% inflation rates, what happens is when the coins start to decline too far in value, they get rid of the low denomination coins and they add new high denomination coins. Our friends up in the Great White North in Canada, they stopped minting cents about 12 years ago, but they started minting $2 coins to make up for it, so they're adjusting it to it that way. When the UK went decimal about 50 years ago, they had a half penny as the lowest denomination coin and a 50 pence coin, half a pound, as the largest coin. They no longer do the half penny, and they've started in the 80s, they started introducing the pound coin, and more recently they introduced the 2-pound coin. There are several countries in the European Union that no longer mint cents, the European euro cent or the euro 2 cent. They round purchases up or down if you're paying cash for it. So if you buy something that's like €1, 32 cents, you pay €1.30. They round it down. If it's €1.34, they round it up to €1.35. When you had the really huge inflation, the hyperinflation, Doug mentioned that I'm interested in Hungarian hyperinflation money, where you've got like the hundreds of % inflation every month. That happens in a few places. What usually happens in other countries is they just basically get rid of the coinage system, the economic system completely, start all over with something brand new. We've never had that issue before in the United States. Hopefully we never will, but that is something that does go on. In the Hungarian situation after the First World War, they introduced something called the punga, which was like 100 of the smaller unit for that. It was worth about 7 cents US when it first started. By 1946, after the Second World War, it was several quadrillion penga to $1. So now they use the forint. They just scrap the whole system. And that's what usually will go on. Now, it has also affected the use of circulating coins. Technology is the other problem, not just inflation, but now the technology comes up. Technology has given us things like you can buy things online, Amazon, eBay, things like that. Well, you can't use coins to buy something on Amazon online. You can't use paper money to do that either. It's like, where are you going to give it to? You have to use some other means of payment to do that. So everything that you buy online, that's one place where you just cannot use coins. Payphones used to be kind of big. When you travel around, you use payphones. Well, nobody uses payphones anymore. Try and find one. I don't know the last time I actually saw a payphone other than in a movie set in the 1940s. They used to be able to put a dime in there. Well, a call would cost a lot more than a dime now anyway, but everybody has smartphones or other kinds of cell phones, and that's what you use. You don't need to. If you need to make a call to somebody, you just reach in your pocket and pull out your phone and make the call. Newspapers, when I was in law school in Boston, you could buy the Boston Globe for 15 cents. They had little machines on just about every street corner. You put in a dime and a nickel, you get a newspaper. Well, Boston Globe paper today, on the Monday through Saturday, is $3.50. No one's going to walk around with $3.50 in change to put into one of those little machines. So you don't see those things anymore either. So there's a lot of ways where we used to be able to use coins to buy stuff that we can't do it anymore. And then, of course, you have the other things that are technologically related that have been created as substitutes for using cash. I mentioned before credit cards and debit cards. The first bank credit cards came out in the late 1950s. They were actually money losers for the banks for about 5 years, but then all of a sudden they became extremely profitable. For most banks, the credit card is the biggest profit center that they have nowadays. Debit cards are somewhat similar, but you should never use debit cards. The consumer protections for debit cards basically are non-existent. If anything goes wrong, you're stuck. So use a credit card rather than a debit card if you can. Electronic payment systems, things like PayPal, Zelle, and the rest of them. Those did not exist, obviously, 100 years ago. And then we have digital currency, cryptocurrency, and all the rest of those kinds of things. There are some governments that are actually looking to getting rid of their regular currency systems and adopting digital. It hasn't happened yet, but a lot of them are looking into it. So, cash is no longer king when making payments. On that chart that you see there, the bar over there to the far left, that's the use of cash. Cash, of course, is coins and paper money. You can see from 2016 to 2022, the use of cash in making payments dropped from 31% to 18% of all payments being made. That's basically almost a 50% drop in that 6-year period. The bar next to it is the dark blue, that's credit cards. You know, since 2016, credit cards accounted for 18%. In 2022, it was 31%, exactly flipped between the two. So the other things, debit cards, again, the yellow one, they've been pretty consistent, 27, 28, 29%. Again, don't use debit cards if you can help it. Towards the right, you see there's those occasional little blips of dark red coming in. You see, usually it's been kind of very low. That's mobile payment apps, using your phone to tap it and make a payment. You'll see that it jumped. The numbers are usually so low that they don't even register. They don't have enough space to put in what it is. But you can see it's generally been like about 1% or so. In 2020, it jumped up to about 4 or 5%. What happened then? 2020 was the year of the pandemic. A lot of people didn't want to touch other people's money. They don't want to give their credit card to somebody. So a lot of things where you just tap, that's when that all came into effect. And mobile apps is where those came in. You'll see also that cash payments in 2020 dropped significantly from 26 down to 19%. They've never really recovered from that. And it's the same thing. People just didn't want to handle other people's paper or anything else. Coin production is not particularly popular, even though we keep making more and more of the darn things. Around the world, it's just kind of declining. Sweden no longer has a mint. The Royal Mint of Sweden has shut down. They have their coins, to the extent they use coins, minted by a private company that is actually a subsidiary of the Mint of Finland, their next door neighbor. The official policy of Sweden is to get rid of all cash. No cash at all. Everything's going to be digital or electronic of some sort. And they're doing pretty well moving towards that way. They actually have a law where we have a law in some states requiring retailers to accept cash. They've got a law that says retailers do not have to accept cash, and a lot of them won't do it. I mentioned before about some of the Euro countries and others, Canada also doing this, the rounding thing, if something is, they round it to the nearest 5-cent interval or the 5-unit interval. That's usually referred to as Swedish rounding. They're the ones who came up with that in the first place. And they aren't the only ones moving toward a cashless society. Again, governments really like digital and electronic payment systems for a lot of reasons. One is it's going to be a lot cheaper. If you don't have to keep minting these coins, you won't be losing 3 cents or losing 2 cents every time you mint a cent because there's no cash involved with it. But it also, my background before was in the anti-money laundering area. You can't pay people under the table using a digital thing because it can be tracked. You can't track cash under the table. You can track electronic transactions. Sometimes people can kind of sneak it around, especially in the cryptocurrency area, but generally governments can find ways to track those kinds of transactions. So that's one reason why they like that kind of stuff. Law enforcement also likes digital electronic payment systems because they're safer. You can't pick someone's pocket if they're using digital currency. You can pick their pocket if they've got a wallet with a lot of cash in it. In Sweden, when the banks introduced their own bank payment system, it was an electronic system that was real time. I make a payment to you, the money is in your account immediately. Whereas in the US, a lot of things like PayPal, sometimes there's like a delay before it actually happens. This thing was immediate, just snap your fingers and it happens. And what Sweden has reported is that within a year, bank robberies in Sweden dropped 98% because it wasn't worth robbing a bank because there wasn't any cash there to rob. No one's going to rob a bank to get $20 or $30. You might rob a bank to get $20 or $30,000, but not for $20 or $30. So they really think that the law enforcement, again, really does like it because that digital type currencies are absolutely secure and there's no way to lose any money. There's no way you could be cheat. Well, sometimes there are ways that digital currencies and cryptocurrencies can be a problem because sometimes the thieves are a little bit smarter than the people operating them. And there's one of the big banks in Australia has actually ditched cash. You cannot get cash. Imagine that. A bank that has no cash, period, zero, none. That's their policy. You go to their ATM, you won't get cash out of it. If they use an ATM anyplace, what you can do is you can make a transfer from one account to the other. If you've got checking and savings, even though they don't have checking accounts anymore, you can't even get a checkbook from the Macquarie Bank. They're just completely getting away from cash completely. And there are other banks trying to do this sort of the same thing. Now, we're Americans, we don't do things the way everybody else does. It's just something in our character. When other countries are there dealing with inflation by getting rid of the small unit coins and getting the larger unit coins, they tend to make the larger unit coin is going to be bigger. The Canadian $2 coin is bigger than the $1 coin. We don't like big clunky coins. They make holes in your pockets, although my wife tells me that women apparently are not allowed to have pockets that are functional. But if you do have pockets that are functional, big coins make holes in them. So people just don't like them. The US large cent was not a very popular coin. The silver dollar generally didn't circulate because it's a big clunky coin. When they try to introduce dollar coins, they tend to fail. But we also don't like coins that are too close in size to each other, so you couldn't make one that's just a little bigger than the existing one. You could not get a 50-cent piece or a dollar that's just a little bit bigger than the half dollar, or a little bigger than a quarter, because that's already been tried. The SBA dollar in 1979 failed largely because it was so close in size to the quarter that people would mix it up, even though it had a picture of a woman on it, and the edge had this thing that made it look like it was 12-sided, even though it was circular. People confused one with the other, and the SBA dollar failed. We can't get rid of the penny the way other countries have, because we've had them forever. And by God, Abe Lincoln is on there. How can we get rid of Abe Lincoln? So that has actually come up as an issue, that you can't get rid of Lincoln on the cent. Another issue that has come in the United States about that is, if you know, pennies are no longer made out of copper. They have a copper coating on a zinc planchet. Well, there are 700 people who work at the company that makes those planchets, and if the US abandons the cent, they will lose their jobs, and there's no politician in Congress who wants to be responsible for 700 people losing their jobs. We would rather lose $93 million a year making pennies than have those 700 people have to find other jobs. But this is, because we're Americans, this is what we do. We care about the little guy who works in that job making zinc planchets. There are some people who will object to this on the grounds that, well, these Europeans are telling us what to do, and we're not going to do it, because it's probably socialism or something like that. And we just kind of resist what other people try and force us to do. There's also an argument about when you get rid of those coins, or get rid of coins in general, or cash, that it's unfair, and to an extent that's true. When you think about, if you don't have coins, you don't have dollar bills or any of this kind of stuff, what are people going to use? Well, they have to use something digital. Well, credit cards are really great, but if you don't have good credit, it's hard to get a credit card. One way you can get a credit card is you make a deposit with the bank, the credit card bank, and they hold your $500 deposit, and they give you a $500 credit limit. But if you don't have $500 to just sit in some account with the bank, that's not going to do you any good. Well, writing checks, that might be one way to deal with it, but of course some banks are not even going to be doing checks anymore. There's actually been a prediction that the US will be a checkless society within the next 2 years, which is another thing. And most banks require you to either keep some money on deposit in the bank, or you pay a monthly fee to use your checks. Well, if a bank requires you to have $1,000 on deposit in order to write checks, if you don't have $1,000, that's not really very good. And if they require you to pay, say, maybe $20 a month for your checking account and then 10 cents for each check, well, if you don't have that extra $20 a month plus 10 cents a check, you've got a real problem with dealing with it. So it is kind of unfair to people on the lower end, what are referred to as the unbent. So how has all this affected how we collect things today and what it is that we collect? Well, technology has been pretty good. Inflation hasn't done a lot of good for us, but technology, I think, has improved our lot as coin collectors in many ways. Bob Baer's speech a little earlier today, he was talking about things like the encapsulation of coins and the grading systems. A lot of that could not have been done 100 years ago because you didn't have the tracking systems that are used to make that work. And even the technology to make the holders, that didn't exist then. So that's like one area where technology has caused things to happen. But now we have funky coins in vogue. There are coins that can be made today that no one could have even imagined making 100 years ago. And also, technology allows a man's reach to exceed his grasp, which is always a good thing. There are things that we can do as collectors that could not have been done 100 years ago. So I'll be kind of describing some of the areas where this is happening. Austria in 2003, they developed an ongoing coin program. Once a year, they will issue a technology-themed coin that is a bimetallic coin. It has a silver outer ring and a niobium metal inner ring, and the niobium ring is colored. The inner ring is colored. The color depends upon, they have a process to colorize these things, and the color that you get depends upon how thick the outer layer is on the coin. It's actually part of the coin. It's not separate from the coin. It's a very complicated process, and it's based upon how thick the layer is that they treat on the coin. And it's measured in nanometers. Say 30 nanometers thickness might give you a green, 35 might give you the orange that's on the butterfly here. And it's very small. What is a nanometer? A nanometer is 1/billionth of a meter. So you're talking here about, they can actually calculate this precisely to 30, 35, 40, whatever it happens to be. Well, how big really is a nanometer? 1/billionth of a meter doesn't really mean anything. If you pull a hair out of your head, that's about 80,000 nanometers. So that gives you an idea as to how precise this actually is. Again, something that could not have been done 100 years ago. Now, these coins have been actually very popular. In the first 19 years that they were being issued as part of the Coin of the Year program that's done, they won first place for bimetallic coins 9 times in 19 years. The 20th year is this year for the coin that was minted 2 years ago. And if you want to see if they win for the 10th time in 20 years, you can just go to room 24 tomorrow at 11 a.m. My money is on it. The colors change each year. The one for 2022 that's now up, it's the Millennium. The theme is extraterrestrial life, and it's a really neat purple coin. So anyway, you might want to check that out tomorrow morning. Canada, 2 years ago, or 6 years ago rather, issued a coin commemorating the 100th anniversary of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada. This is a very astronomical coin. You've got an eclipse at the top, a meteor crater on the bottom, there's a couple of galaxies swirling around, gas clouds, and aurora borealis, and a meteor that is plunging to the Earth there on the left. That meteor plunging to the Earth is actually a piece of a meteorite that has been embedded into the coin. It has also been colored to give all the other effects. This one was really difficult to photograph because since that thing is attached to the top, you don't want to knock it around, so it's in a plastic capsule that I haven't figured out how to open up in order to keep the thing from being damaged in any way. And I haven't figured out how to open it without breaking something, so I had to photograph it through the plastic, which causes some reflection issues, but I think the picture came out pretty well. But again, this is something that you wouldn't have done 100 years ago. The Mint of Poland is a very innovative mint. They created this coin for Nu, which is an island republic in the South Pacific that has no connection with Poland or with the subject matter here. This is a painting by Vermeer, my favorite painter, and it's the Milkmaid. And Poland has developed a process to reproduce great paintings. They've done a whole lot besides just the Vermeers and the others, but they really capture the details of what Vermeer did. The outer gold layer there that looks like a picture frame, that is actually part of the coin. It's very finely detailed and engraved with all the filigree that you would see in a regular picture frame, but it's gold plated there on the edges, and the coin itself is silver, but you wouldn't know it just to look at the painting there. It really is a remarkable achievement. North Macedonia is one of those former republics of Yugoslavia. They, in 2018, had this coin struck by the Mint of Lithuania. The fact that I am half Lithuanian Polish has nothing to do with me using Lithuanian and Polish coins. This one commemorates or celebrates the signs of the zodiac. on the obverse on there on the left, that the blue globe, it's cobalt blue glass, and it's actually a globe that comes up over the surface of the coin. Cobalt blue happens to be my favorite color, so that's the reason for this one. The reverse side has the bottom of the globe. It's really a hemisphere, and it's absolutely flat on the back side. It's Sagittarius, which happens to be my birth sign, which is why it is in there. But what they managed to do, was create a coin that has this glass insert, plus the gold plating there for the Sagittarius figures on the back, and it's all on basically silver planchet. It is really a cool coin. This is another one that was difficult to photograph because the reverse is flat, but the top part, the obverse, is not. That globe really does stick out above the body of the coin. So when you have it flat on the reverse to take the obverse picture, that's easy to do. But how do you take a picture of a surface when the coin is rocking like that? It took a while. It took me almost an hour to get that photo done. But again, I think it came out kind of nicely. This next one, this is a 1766 francs coin from Cameroon, minted again by the Mint of Poland. They keep postponing the issuing date. It now looks like if you want to get one, you have to wait until August the 16th for it to actually be available to you. And the price is going to be about $1,500 for this coin. 1766 francs is about $3.50, $4 US. So it's somewhat pricey compared to its face value. This coin, it glows in the dark because of fluorescent paint, but it also hovers. It has a tiny motor on the inside. It generates an electromagnetic pulse, and if you put it over the thing, it will hover over there. I'll be talking a little bit more about that aspect of this coin later on. Coin, and let's put that in quotes. But this is just coming out right now. It was a big hit at the World's Fair of Money in Europe, the one that they have that's not as good as the one we have here in the US. And here's that top and bottom view of the same coin. Coin, again, in quotes. Power Coin, they're the ones who gave me this photograph because I haven't actually seen the coin itself, and they're one of the big retailers for it. Lithuania again, this is the 19.18 euros. You say, why 19.18 euros? Well, 1918 was in February of 1918, the Council of Lithuania declared independence from Russia, taking advantage of the Russian Revolution and World War I. And so this was to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the 1918 Declaration of Independence. I don't know why it's in 2020 because that's 102 years, but that's for them to deal with. This is a very technologically astute coin. The obverse side, it looks like a credit card. The obverse side on the far left, that figure, the knight on horseback with the sword above his head, that's the Vytis. It's the Lithuanian national emblem. You look at it closely and you realize that's a QR code. You click on, with your smartphone, you click on the QR phone, and it takes you to a link through to the Bank of Lithuania where you can purchase or obtain digital coins. How cool is that? The reverse, the yellow, green, red on top, that's the Lithuanian flag. If you look at it carefully, it has the Lithuanian national anthem imprinted in binary code all across it. And the picture of the Council of Lithuania, the guys who actually signed the Declaration of Independence, has 36,525 pixels. Why 36,525 pixels? Well, over 100 years, that's the number of days in 100 years, and that's how they managed to do that. This is just really cool stuff. Now here's one of the most remarkable modern coins ever come up. I mentioned before the Republic of New. They have a coin commemorating the 60th anniversary of the invention of the buffalo wing. A very major event in the history of mankind. Now Poland does a lot of the coins for New, which actually doesn't even have its own currency. They use the New Zealand dollar. They don't have a mint. There's only about 30,000 new ones around, and I doubt that any new one owns any of these coins. I think the Polish mint was a little bit embarrassed to do this, and they didn't do it. It was done by a private mint in China, and it was commissioned by a private company in Australia for New, which gives you an idea as to how some of these things get created. And the US doesn't want to be out of all this wonderful stuff. 4 weeks ago, there was a press release, and they announced that beginning in next year, there will be a 3-coin type series of coins celebrating DC Comics superheroes. There'll be 3 gold coins, 3 silver medals, and 3 copper nickel medals. And in 2025, they will celebrate Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman. Superman and Batman were the first 2 superheroes and extremely popular. Wonder Woman was the first female superhero, and she's right up there with the other 2 guys in terms of popularity. This is going to be a 3-year program, so there'll be more in 2025 and 2026. And in the same press release, they announced that there will be a survey taken as to who will be the superheroes in those next 2 years. They have a list of 12, and you get to pick 3 for each year. Voting ends this Sunday, right after the end of the convention here, and be sure you vote early and often. It's on the U.S. Mint site, www.usmint.gov. Be sure you vote early and often. And also, technology has made life easier for us in a whole lot of ways. There are things that we can do today as numismatists, which I refer to as numismatizing, and you may use that word if you wish. Just remember to give me credit for it. Things that we can do that 100 years ago just would have been impossible. And I'm going to do like a case study showing how would I have done something 100 years ago, and how would I do it today? And you can just see how marvelous life is today, thanks to the miracles of technology. The coin that I'm going to be talking about, it's going to be a Byzantine gold solidus of the Empress Irene. So you would say, well, Byzantine gold solidus, that's not really change, pocket change, but it was 1,200 years ago, and God, that's good enough for me. Irene is very interesting. She was the first woman to rule the empire in her own name. Before her, if you were an empress, you were basically someone's wife, mother, daughter, sister, something like that. She actually ruled in her own name. She wasn't the power behind the throne, she was the throne. She actually obtained her power by deposing, blinding, and probably killing her son, but still she managed to get to the top, and this coin that I'm going to be talking about is what she did. I couldn't go back a full 100 years ago. I could only go back to 1930 to find something that would work, but this is the Rado sale of 1930. It was the biggest sale of Byzantine coins ever up to that point in time, and this is the cover of the catalog that was done for that. Here you see the first inside page of it, and you'll see that it is the richest and most vast private collection of Byzantine coins, and also covers coins of countries that were contemporary with the Byzantines at that time. So this is really cool. I'm looking forward to seeing what they've got in this catalog. You'll see on the bottom there that it costs 30 Swiss francs. 30 Swiss francs back then would have been maybe about $5.82 or so. Today, that would be the equivalent of $113. Pretty pricey for a catalog, even for a catalog of the biggest sale ever of this type of coin, to charge you $113 for it. And I'll be talking about that in a little bit. And here you have the conditions of sale. And basically, the conditions of sale are, if you're the successful bidder, you pay a 10% fee to Mr. Rado as a buyer's fee. And if you want, he will do the bidding for you. There's a courtesy for just another 5% more. And he also gives his grading standards here. But then you look at this and you see, well, let's see, on the bottom of it, it indicates that there are only 325 copies of this, and this is copy number 257. Very limited edition. That's something I'll have to talk about in a minute. And then you can also see it's in French. The whole thing is in French. It's not a problem for some of us. French happens to be one of my languages, and it's really pretty easy French, so it's not a big deal. But suppose you didn't speak French. How would you actually use this kind of a catalog in 1930 when this was done? Well, you might have a friend who speaks French and is willing to sit there for a couple hours reading this thing to you and translating it word by word, page by page, which is probably going to be a really good friend if he or she is willing to do that. Or you could get your Larousse dictionary, which is the best, and go yourself word by word. It's going to take even longer to do that. Not to mention that if you do it word by word, you're not going to get the context of a lot of the words. There are phrases and things that a dictionary will not tell you what they really mean, and you'll completely miss the point of something. That would have been a problem then. Today, well, first of all, for a dealer at the level of Rado, his catalog today, he'd be like a Kunker or a Knack in Switzerland or one of the others. The catalog it might be in French, as this one was, but if you go to the upper right side on the first page, this catalog is going to be online, which it wasn't 100 years ago, and there'll be several icons there that show different national flags. One of those flags will probably be the Union Jack or the Stars and Stripes. You click on it, and the whole catalog is all of a sudden translated into English for you. You don't even have to deal with it. If you didn't do it that way, and you have to actually get a printed catalog that was written in French, you can pull out your smartphone, use the Google Translate app, and you can do the whole page at once and get everything. It's not going to be 100% perfect. It won't be as good as his translation electronically. Again, something you could not have done 94 years ago. Well, another thing, I mentioned that this catalog costs the equivalent of what would today be $113. Well, if it's online, it's not going to cost you a dime. You've just saved $113 that you could spend on coins that otherwise you would have had to spend buying the catalog. But wait, there's more. There were only 325 copies of this catalog. How likely is it that this guy in Lugano, Switzerland, is going to send you a copy of his catalog? How will you even know that this catalog even exists? You probably won't, unless you're some fabulously wealthy guy who is on his international mailing list, and he sends you a telegram telling you, hey, I've got this new sale coming up, do you want to bid in it? And then you spend weeks getting the catalog sent to you by overseas mail. Today, again, it's probably going to be online, and even if it's not online, you'll find out about one way or the other. You've probably got 30 messages in your email telling you, announcing it. It might be advertised on like the ANA might have something about it. Numismatic News, Coin World, all these places are going to be telling you about this great sale that they wouldn't have been able to tell you about 100 years ago because they wouldn't even known about it. So you don't need to spend the money on the catalog. You don't need to even worry about finding out about it. You've got it right there. Oh, but how are you actually going to bid on this coin even if you have a catalog? Are you going to fly to Lugano, Switzerland? Well, not in 1930, you wouldn't, unless you're Amelia Earhart or Charles Lindbergh. You would probably take a boat, which is going to take you 5, 6, 7 days to get across the ocean, then another 2 days by train to get into Switzerland to participate. That's pretty expensive. You don't have to do that anymore. You can probably bid online. You don't even have to spend a stamp to do that. Again, big, huge savings that you can get today that you could not have done today. Well, we go into the catalog once again, and here you can't see it very clearly, but this kind of lists all the different things that he has offered for sale, and about 2/3 of the way down the page, it does say, yes, indeed, he does have a solidus of the Empress Irene, the very coin that I'm trying to get, so that'll be great. Again, just a reminder, I know that because I could read it. If you didn't have your little French translator, it's going to be a problem. So we go into the catalog. This is page 86 of the catalog. 2/3 of the way down, you see the Empress Irene. Yes, and it does have, a solidus and a copper coin as well. I couldn't care less about the copper coin. Everybody has those, but the gold one is the one that I want. And then it has I don't know if you can see it clearly, but it's number 1780 is her coin, her solidus, and it has a little asterisk in front. Since you could read the French, you know that an asterisk in front of a coin number is a plated coin. You can actually see a picture of the coin. So we go forward and see here's plate number 40, and it has all sorts of coins on it. And her coin, the coin we're interested in, is on the bottom center. It's where this copy of the catalog actually belongs to the French National Library, the Bibliothèque Nationale. And that little red thing there, which is actually on the coin itself, is their emblem, marking it as their copy of the catalog. So yes, there's a picture of it. Now, by the grace of God and the miracles of Photoshop, I was able to extract both their picture of the coin and the description of the coin right there. And you can see this is the coin that you may be interested in acquiring, and there's the description of it directly below that. Again, it's in French. It gives a pretty good description of it. It has a facing bust of Irene with a checkered robe, and that's the same type of face as another coin, which is one of her son's coins before she killed him, that had her portrait on it. And then the reverse has the same portrait as the obverse, which actually is not true. And it says it's very rare, last line, very rare, splendide. This is to Bob Baer's point earlier today. Splendide is what he referred to as what we might call mint state, or MS 60 plus. But people just kind of made up their own words, adjectival words, to describe things. Now, this is the best you can get out of, in that time period, in the coin catalog as to the coin you might want to get. I actually have this coin, so I don't need to go and buy it. I don't have to go back in time to get it because I already have it. And this is my photograph of my coin and a description. I used this coin in an exhibit a couple years ago, and that's the photo that was used in the exhibit and the description that I created. The description is a little bit more detailed than his. That's partly a function that we just do things a little bit differently. But where he said she's wearing a checkered robe, I say she's wearing a loros, which is the name of the actual garment, which we know to be the case. But anyway, I think that gives you a little bit better idea. But to compare the two, that's his photo and mine there on the bottom. They look kind of really different. I suggest that if you're really trying to figure out what the coin looks like, the one on the bottom is probably a better representation of it. You notice the one on top is kind of like a little bit muddy. So why is it kind of muddy like that? Well, photography numismatic photography was kind of primitive in those days. That is actually not a photograph of the coin. It is a photograph of a plaster cast of a coin. The problem with film photography, apart from the fact that it's extremely expensive, or was, they really couldn't afford to do color photos at that point. If you had coins of different metals and different toning levels at the same time, put them all on a page the way this one would have been done, they look kind of funny. The different colors and the different toning levels. So the lesser quality coins make the better quality coins look worse than they really are, but the better quality coins make the lesser quality coins look even worse than they really are. So the way they got around that was to even everything out and make these plaster casts. The advantage for them of the plaster cast is that they can show both the obverse and the reverse at the same time, which you could not do very easily with film photography. You could do it, but it took a lot of work. Whereas any idiot using a digital camera can make that photo there, as I've demonstrated. All you have to do is you take the ANA summer seminar class on digital photography, one of which is taught by museum curator Doug Mudd, and you can take really decent photos that actually give information to people. So anyway, this is kind of a difference as to how you might have bought a coin then and how you'd buy the same coin today, 94 years later. So that's where we are now. So what's going to happen in the future on the things that we collect? What kind of impact will there be on coin collecting? What will the coins of the future be like? Will there even be coins in the future? And then we almost get into, well, what really is a coin? So this is that Canadian coin that I mentioned that was very difficult to photograph because it's in that capsule. Well, you couldn't spend that thing. It is legal tender, but I doubt you go anywhere in Canada and actually spend that, certainly not if it's in a plastic container of any sort. It's just completely impractical. It's a really beautiful piece of work, I think, technologically brilliant, but it's not really worthwhile as a coin. If they didn't have legal tender, you wouldn't call it a coin. You say it's a medal or something. And then this one, of course, even more so, is a little bit, really stretches the lines of what you might consider to be a coin, especially since the whole point of the coin is it hovers over the little base plate. Coins aren't really expected to hover over base plates. And you would have to, if you're going to use it, you'd probably have to, how's he going to put that in his coin and the little things in the cash register? It's just not going to work very well. Now, in terms of other things that are involved with all this, I sort of like to do a little bit of a survey. First of all, there are a couple different ways when people can get started in collecting. Some people might just sort of, for some reason or other, decide, I'm going to go to a dealer and I'm going to buy this coin that I want to get, something that is not available anywhere in circulation. You got it like it's an old coin or something, and you go to a dealer and you buy it. Other people, their first starting collection, I think, tends to be, you see something in circulation, whether it's in your country or not, interests you, you decide you're going to start collecting those. Or grandpa comes back from the war and he shows you something that he ran across in the country where he was. Or grandma, she's gone on a trip to Europe and she shows you something, those kinds of things. Or you just basically break into your dad's poker jar and steal a few of the coins that he's going to use next month. So as a survey, how many people the very first time they ever got into coin collecting, the very first thing that they did was to go to a dealer and buy an obsolete coin, something that was not being minted anywhere at that time? And of course the answer is nobody. Now, how many people the very first thing they got was something that they saw in circulation or someone gave to them that was currently in circulation somewhere in the world? It's sort of a show of hands about that. Yes, that's how we generally get it. So if coins go away, if there are no coins to trigger that first collecting interest, how will the next group of coin collectors become coin collectors? They won't have anything to say, here's something really cool, because they won't exist anymore. Coins will be basically museum pieces. So maybe they go through the Metropolitan Museum up in New York, which has a really great Byzantine coin display just as you go into the medieval section. It's there on the right, in case you're wondering. You go there and you see that might interest you, and then you go and buy a coin from a dealer. But you're not going to be able to get coins out of circulation if there are no coins circulating. So I do have some concerns about that, how that will impact in the future. The other thing is, even in the short term, I've given you an example of the funky coins, the buffalo wing coin and things like that. New is the one who authorized the buffalo wing coin. As of June the 1st of this year, New had issued more than 900 new coin types between January 1 and June 1st of this year. In 5 months, over 900 different coin types. And that's not like a 2024 version of a 2023 coin. It's 900 completely different things. And there's probably been another 300 since June 1st. you reach a certain point where things get saturated. I think most of us here are old enough to remember the Franklin Mint, which used to do, you get the 25 greatest race cars ever done in little, like, I don't know, Hot Wheel type things, but they were little pure silver, really beautiful work. But then once you got those, then you could go and get the 25 greatest airplanes ever done, or the 25 greatest military heroes, all sorts of different things like that. Then what would happen, you would usually buy those things like in a subscription program. Everybody who wanted it would sign up for it. Each month you would get one of the things in the series of 25. You might spend like, $50 a month to get these really wonderful things. After 2 years and a month, you've got all 25 of them. This is really great. Well, what would happen, people would kind of do that, and then, well, okay, I've got all these, now I want to collect something different. I want to get that next series that comes out, but I got to raise the funds to do it. So now that I've got all 25 of the greatest race cars ever done, I'll sell those and use the money to buy the next one. Then you find out, well, there's a problem, because everybody who wants the 25 greatest race cars ever done already has the 25 greatest race cars ever done, and half of them are trying to do the same thing you are, trying to sell them. So those things that you sold at, or bought at $50 a pop, maybe you'll get $1 or $2 for each one, and that's based upon the silver value, because no one wants those things anymore. Franklin Mint was huge in the late 60s, all through the 70s. By 1980, yeah, they're kind of gone. You don't see them much around anymore because they just completely flooded the market. Really high quality, well done stuff, but there's just too much of it, and there wasn't enough of a market. There was no secondary market, but there wasn't even enough of a first-time market to make it go. So these things like what New is doing, I think that's going to be, that kind of thing is going to cause a problem over time. And that, I think, is...
Yes, and we are over time at this
Oh,
point.
I apologize to everybody.
But,
But do we do question, or I am finished?
okay, well, lunch is starting at just 10 minutes from now. And so it's in room 21. So if everyone can convene over there, if you bought a ticket for lunch, that's what our next thing will be. In the meantime, thank you very much for a very interesting presentation. There is a real question of where we are going with this. We can be like philately, where nobody uses stamps anymore, and that becomes more of an issue, and that may be partly our fate, but hopefully we're doing more things, and coins have more connection with our history, that they'll remain in circulation for a longer period than we think, but that remains to be seen. Thank you very much, and we will reconvene here at 2 p.m., and we'll start our last talk of the day at that point. Thanks very much, everyone.